Good morning, everyone. Let's talk some Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. So hello everyone and welcome back to Through the Pages with Dee. Today I'll be reviewing Brandon Sanderson's MISTBORN Final Empire. So let's get started. I did quite enjoy this book. After I'd got through what I would consider was the lull of it, meaning kind of the middle, it's not quite the middle, but kind of the middle, where we detract away from the action, all the goings on, and we're just kind of mulling along with the story as so far as we've reached it. Once we got past that part, the pace picked up again. So we start off by being introduced to Kelsia and Vin. Those are our kind of main POVs. I really enjoyed Vin as a character. I thought she's great. I think she has a fantastic character arc within this book. She starts off as a Scar, part of the thieving Scars, and she's quite downtrodden, quite misused, quite abused as well, really. Not only by what was once a time with her brother, she's also downtrodden by the guy who now kind of owns her, and she's in debt to this guy via her brother. So he's using her and taking advantage of her, and he does give her regular beatings, which obviously I didn't like, but it does add to the story. And then eventually we get to Kelsia, and Kelsia is the kind of hero of the tale. His story is epic, it's moving, it's touching, it takes you down all these different paths of everything that he's been through, and him and Vin eventually meet. Kelsia is looking for Vin, he is looking for other, what are known as MISTBORNs. Now, just to explain what a MISTBORN is. A MISTBORN is somebody who is born usually from nobility and is able to use all the elements of the 8 metals. So they have every power of the 8 metals at their disposal. The others are known as mistlings, which means they can use one element of one metal. So for instance, just let me check my notes. We've got Breeze, who's a mistling, and he uses pewter, which is to influence, change people's thought process or make them feel more relaxed. So it basically preys on their emotions. So there is this group, Breeze being one of Kelsia's group. There's also Ham, who's called Hammond, and there is Clubs, who is what's known as a smoker. Ham too is a mistling, but their employer, who has employed Kelsia and his group of men, is called Yedden, and he's their employer, and he is a rebel Scar leader. And their intents are to take over where they are. Their intention is to sort of knock the nobility off the throne and the Lord Ruler and take over, because they've been downtrodden for so long, and they just basically want ownership of where they're from back. So Luthadel is the main place, the main sort of town, which is where the Lord Ruler is, in Luthadel. We've also got other characters involved in this, which is Reen, who is Vin's brother. We've got Cameron, who is the thief master, who is the guy who's been holding on to Vin as a debt from the brother, and he's been the one beating her. And we've got the other character called Doxon, who is part of Kelsia's gang as well. They're a great little group. They gave me sort of flashbacks to Kings of the Wild, with that little camaraderie of a group. Clubs is kind of the silent, quiet type, doesn't really say much unless it's necessary. Breeze and Ham have a lot of opinions, and their banter back and forth is great. I love that interaction between Breeze and Ham. They both also take the time out to teach Vin ways of the allomantic metals. They teach her both of their own skills with the metals. So the metals are, which I'm sure many of you know this because I know MISTBORN has been around for a while now, but the 8 metals are iron, steel, tin, pewter, copper, bronze, zinc and brass. And what Kelsia teaches Vin, because Vin believes to start off with that she's just a mistling, that she doesn't have access, like most of the nobles do, to these other allomantic powers. But Kelsia teaches her when they finally meet up that actually she does, and she can tap into them. So he gives her a little vial, and it's a solution mixed with tiny fragments of these metals. And once she takes it, she feels the metals sort of culminating in her stomach to create the power. So it is quite an interesting magic system. What I did find with the magic system is that one of the downfalls towards this magic system was we're kind of reminded a little too often of the metals and their abilities. It wasn't off-putting to me, but I can see how it would be off-putting to someone. It was kind of like having things explained to you in such a way as you're a child, a little bit. I kind of felt like somebody could take it like that, like it's kind of a bit of a childish explanation to keep going over these metals time and time again. Once it had been explained to us maybe once, twice, three times, I think as a reader we had the grip of it. We knew what the concept of the 8 metals was. In actual fact, we find out that it's actually more like 10, 11 metals. But these 8 standard metals that the MISTBORNs use, we get to know this. We don't keep needing that told to us. Once we know, we know. But I did find that quite repetitive within the book, that it was constantly going over this metal does this metal does that. Once we'd heard it 3 times, I thought that was enough and we don't really need to keep going over it. But I will say that for me, it didn't spoil the story. I just kind of glazed over those sections really. I knew what the metals did. I knew that, this one did this and this one does that. I knew what she was going to tap into as and when she needed to. So I didn't really need that kind of keep being reiterated to me. But that is what was happening in the book. So I did think that, yes, I found that a little bit annoying, only a little bit, but I can imagine how some people that would put them off and be kind of like, you don't need to keep saying this, we know now. But other than that, yeah, it's a political intrigue book. The depravity of the Scar, the conditions that they're living in, the work that they have to do, how they're a very downtrodden people, how they don't seem to be able to even have a sniff of the ability for an uprising. However, little do they know that there is certain elements of Scar that are planning an uprising, Yedden being the guy who is leading this uprising. And with the help of Kelsia, he intends to form an army. And this army is being hidden in caves away from Luthadel, away from the Lord Ruler's sight, and they intend to, as I say, form an uprising. So Kelsia has his band of merry men, shall we say, which is Breeze, Ham, I forget his name, Clubs, and Docs, and they are the guys who he is relying on to help him finish this task or complete this task. But there's also his brother Marsh. We don't have Marsh a lot in this book, but towards the end of the book, Marsh becomes a very prevalent character, and the arc that Marsh goes through as a character is outstanding. There are some quite, would I say, gruesome details, potentially, where the Inquisitors are involved. They can be quite scary Mary, I'd say, with the description of them and what's been done to them. They've kind of got these sort of spikes that have been put through the back of the head to the front. So it does sound quite awful. And so, there's things that happen along in this story where Marsh has to take quite extreme steps to be able to infiltrate into the Lord Ruler's favour, really. So as I say, you've got the depravity of the Scar, and then you've got the nobles sitting in these metaphorical high castles, and they have the Scar work for them. That is basically just how it is. The Scar work for the nobility in such horrendous conditions in some of the places. They're just basically dogs' bodies. That's all they do, the Scar is. They work and work and work to have any sort of semblance of life. That's all they do. There's also a religious aspect to this story. So we've got the Lord Ruler, who is depicted as this invincible god, this I can't think of the word. Why does this always happen to me? I can never think of the words. He is the Lord Ruler is immortal. He can't die, or that at least that is the idea that's given to the nobility and the Scar from readings and preachings and so on. It's very much believed that the Lord Ruler is immortal and he can't die. Whether that's the case or not, I guess you'll have to read Final Empire to find out. However, there is a favourite character of mine called Sazed. He is my most favourite character. He has this ability, which is called, if I remember rightly, Farukami, if that's how you say it, Farukami. It's like Faru chemistry. It's like chemistry, Faru chemistry. I think it's Farukami. He is an absolutely outstanding character. He's basically brought in as like a bodyguard for Vin. So he's to take her to, because Vin has to play this role. Her role within invading the nobility is to go to the balls. She's pretending to be Lord Renault's niece, and she has to attend the balls and find information out that way. So while she's attending these balls, Sazed goes with her. And he's just an awesome character. So Sazed is a terrorisman. They were once part of the nobility's kind of serving staff. But the Lord Ruler found out that Sazed have this power, this Farukami. And it's kind of an all-knowing knowledge. They use metals like the MISTBORNs do and the Mistlings. However, rather than tap into the metals and expel what they have, they store up energy and gain. Well, what Sazed is doing, he's reading through the Lord Ruler's journals to get some background information to help Kelsier. So they're trying to suss out basically the past of the Lord Ruler to find sort of a niche in his history where they might be able to break his immortality. So that's a very interesting storyline. And what you will find in Final Empire is there are lots of little hidden mysteries, little hidden gems of storylines where there are spies, there are houses that are against each other, because the nobility are classed as houses. So it's house this, house that. So the Scar belong to different houses, and you will find that they sort of clash against each other. Certain houses don't get along with others. So one of the elements of what Kelsier's plan is to turn the houses against each other and use that to his own ability to hopefully outdo the nobility, sort of crumble them from the inside out, if you like. So it's very, very interesting story. So that's part of what Vin's assignment is within this group when she goes to these balls and functions. But she does find someone who she has a romantic endeavour with, and this particular character turns out again to be quite interesting. He is noble born, he is from a house, and he turns out to also have an interesting story. But there are other nobles within these balls and parties, etc., who turn out to be either other MISTBORNs or spies of a certain degree. So there's all this intrigue going on, this political intrigue where you don't know who's going to do what to who, in essence. You know, there's this basis of a story, which is Kelsier and his crew and what they intend to do for the Scar, and for Yedden and him being their employer. But there's also the other side of things where there's these little hidden gems of stories. So yeah, there's so much going on within this book, actually. When you get past that lull and you move on to sort of the final, what I would say, third of the book, that it just lifts and it becomes more interesting. Brandon Sanderson has done a very good job of writing characters. The characters are fantastic. The crew that's with Kelsier, all the characters in that are amazing. You don't really get to speak much with the Lord Ruler up until the end, but you do get these kind of journal snippets with each chapter. So you're kind of in the place of Sazed, reading the journals, finding out what the Lord Ruler actually wrote, or the chosen one. He was kind of a chosen one, and he had this quest which he had to fulfill. So there's also the intrigue and the mystery of that little story that's going on as well. Then you've got Vin finding out about her allomancy and who she is, what she's capable of. She also has a mystery to herself in regards to the Inquisitors, and where her hereditary comes, where her, is it hereditary, the word I'm looking for? Where her family ties come into play, because in essence, to be part of to be a MISTBORN, you are meant to be of noble birth. so somebody a lot higher up than a Scar. So there's also Vin finding out who potentially her father is. She knows who her mother was, but she doesn't really know who her father is. Reen, her brother, did, but Reen is nowhere to be seen. We also find out about Reen as well in this book and what happened to him. So there's all these unveilings in the story, these little avenues that Brandon Sanderson takes you down and then reveals in the last third of the book. So I did find it really interesting in that last third. That's when, like it was told to me, keep going. A couple of people told me, keep going, it gets better. That wasn't a lie. That is absolutely the truth. So if you are in MISTBORN and you are struggling with the magic system and you're thinking that, it is slightly too repetitive and it's maybe throwing you off, please keep ploughing on, keep going, or maybe give it another go, because the story does get better in that final third. You do get answers to your questions, all those mysteries that are laid down, all those tracks that are made to these other little snippets and spindles of stories that are spreading off this main sort of event of what Kelsey is trying to do with Vin. We do get the answers to these little outstretching stories. So I did find that really, really well done. It takes quite a clever mind to keep up with all your little mysteries that you've going on here, there and everywhere. So I do credit Sanderson with that vastly. It takes a lot of skill to be able to keep up with the little things that you're putting out there. So yeah, overall, I think this is sort of a mystery intrigue with a sort of an underlying, in my opinion anyway, sort of this underlying Dickensian gaslampy feel when we're talking about the mist and the night times and how the Scar don't go out at night because of the mist. We've got all these feels of that kind of vibe. It's not set in that kind of world, but it has that kind of feel to it, that sort of grimy, spooky sort of 17th, 18th century, maybe 19th century London, where it has that feel to it, and I really liked that, especially when we're talking about the night time and the mist. I also really enjoyed the magic system. I do enjoy it, even though I do feel like it was repeated a little bit too often. I did really enjoy the magic system. It's very simple to understand. It's very easy to follow. Some magic systems aren't quite like that. Some magic systems in fantasy don't actually give you a starting block from how they were created. But we don't always necessarily need that. Fantasy is just fantasy. And I think as readers, we accept that magic is a thing. But it does make a big difference to a book when it's actually explained. I think that's a nice touch. I think that's a really good thing to put into a book, is actually give some kind of explanation to the magic system, because therefore then it kind of grounds it. It kind of makes it more of a reality. You kind of can sort of come to terms with it easier, that it's a real thing. It makes it slightly more real that you are having this explained to you. This is where it started from. This is how it works. And it's the workings of magic sometimes that I think we want to know about. Like, how is this possible? How are they actually able to do this? And the way Brandon Sanderson goes into the visual explanation through words of the magic is superb. The way he describes what Kelsey and what Vin do when they're out in the evenings and they're using their allomancer is so good. You can really visualize it and see. And one of the elements, and it's so small, but I did find it so intriguing, is just the element of the MISTBORN cloak and how it's kind of cut into strips. It just sounds so, I don't know, it really does sound magical. It makes it magical, even though it's just probably quite a very simple grey cloak that doesn't really have much, of anything to it. It's not gilded with gold or it's not anything like that. It's just a simple grey cloak. But it means that people within Luthadel or wherever can actually tell that it is a MISTBORN, so they stay clear. This sort of shredded cloak gives warning of who they are, what their capabilities are, and to stay clear. And that is quite honestly what happens. But the other elements of the uprising of the Scar and what actually happens, and the sacrifices that Kelsey makes, the sacrifices that his brother Marsh makes, the ideas that the clan come up with together, Doc's how he's kind of, I would say, second in command to Kelsey, I would say it's just a great dynamic within this group. Yes, Clubs keeps quite quiet, but Breeze and Hammond and Docs are all very outspoken and are kind of the seconds to Kelsey to make this work and keep going. And it's just absolutely superb. And then the ending is just sublime. The ending was sublime for me. So, will I continue this series on? Yes, I have them there. I'm not sure which is next in the series. I will have to just have a look at which is book 2, which is book 3. But yeah, I will carry on. I want to know what happens with Vin. I want to know what happens with the rest of the characters. I want to know if Luthadel becomes a better place. I want to know if the uprising of the Scar was successful. I want to know for the long term. I mean, there's just a lot of things that I want to know, and I want to continue to follow the story of Vin. So yeah, I will continue to read, and I do advise it as a read, as a series to get into. I would say if you're struggling with that magic system, be patient with it. I did find it repetitive. I will admit I did find it repetitive, and I did at times maybe feel like I was being spoken to like I was 2, like I needed explaining to me in really great detail. Like, you know, sometimes when you say to somebody, explain it to me like I'm 2 years old. I did feel like that was happening. So could I have lived with less of that? Yes, absolutely. But it didn't deter me from the story. Where I found the lull didn't have anything to do with magic being overly explained. It was because we'd gone action, action, action from the start, from the get-go, and then we dropped. So when a story does that to me, I do sort of dwindle off a little bit and think, oh, you've lost the action now. You know, how are you going to keep me into this? But I pushed on through that. It wasn't that bad, but I pushed through it. And yeah, it does pick up again. That last third of the book is amazing. It's phenomenal. The resolutions that you get into mysteries, the way that things just quickly changed is so good. I really, really enjoyed it. So yes, I would highly, highly advise to read Mistborn Final Empire. I think it was great. Such a good book. Brandon Sanderson has got a very, very good talent. He definitely knows how to write characters. He definitely knows how to write a magic system. Maybe just don't repeat it so often, if you wouldn't mind, please, Mr. Sanderson. But other than that, I think we can safely say it is a good book. I love the characters. I loved the environment with that kind of feel to it, that kind of grimy Dickensian sort of underworldy type feel. I did really enjoy that. You've got, you know, the nobility up here, all beautiful and shiny and brand new, and then the Scar right down at the bottom, all grubby and grimy, and the kind of in-betweens, which is like Kelsey and Docs and Vin. They're not quite nobility, but they're not quite Scar either. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed it, and I do think that if you are looking for something which has got that kind of Dickensian, gas lampy, somewhat maybe slightly horror feel about it, just in its environment, not necessarily that. I think that's the intent, but it does kind of give you that feel. You do get that kind of environmental feel when you're reading it. If you're looking for something like that, but with an epic kind of fantasy to it, where, you know, it is kind of a quest and it is kind of magic powers and somebody who we have to topple from the throne, and yeah, I would say definitely give Mistborn a chance. I really think it's worth a read. So I will continue to read on, and I will obviously review book 2 of Mistborn. And other than that, it's Wednesday. Enjoy your day. Whatever you get up to, make sure you do it with a smile on your face, with good intent in your heart. Do a good turn for somebody today, and karma will come back and reward you tenfold. So, yeah, have yourselves a great day. I will see you all on Friday for my review of A Hot Dose of Hell. That's going to be an interesting one. And, yep, as I say, I'll see you Friday. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. Hey, everyone. Thanks as usual for watching this video. And if you want more content, you can click on one of the following links. Thanks so much for your support. See you again next time.